So yeah, copyright.
Right, okay, copyright. Well, going back to what we were talking about, the Crown owns the idea that is the Western world civilization of commerce and everything that streams out of it. Right? And so, through their education system, they introduced us into their world. So we would become renters of their ideas or their constructs. And in renting their constructs, we are putting our energy into their world, propping up their world, so they benefit from all the power that we give them. So, and that's really what's all that's happening. There's nothing else happening. Now, when you talk about copyright, like the right of copy, the government, like in Australia, the government, or the corporation called Australia, looks at the Crown. The rule of law, the courts, they all look at the Crown. The sheriffs who represent the law, in terms of law enforcement, and the police, they all represent the Crown. They are all looking at the Crown. Meaning that they are administering, they're administering the affairs of the Crown. And when you look at the ideas that the Western world civilization offers us in their world, like money. Now, it's clear to Fiona and I that there is no such thing as money in the real world. You can't find it. It's an idea that's invisible. It's another fairy tale. Now, we've been trained to believe that, that we have coins and we have notes. And I say, well, a coin is not money. A coin is just a bit of destroyed metal with a fictitious value or commercial value placed on that piece of metal. And we put our energy in, we think that's worth something. The same as notes, or now we've got plastic notes, but notes that come from trees. The notes are just destroyed trees, and the coins are just destroyed mountains and destroyed minerals. But there's no money. Now, what is actually happening, what really is happening, is that they need our signature, because we're the creator. So we have to sign, with our power creation, a piece of paper, which is an application form for a bank, or the bank, the courts are the bank, the government is the bank, and the Crown is the bank. The whole system is a bank, but not a bank as we think of Commonwealth Bank. The whole bank is the fictitious world of dead energy, where we're serving false idols, like we're worshipping a dead corpse, satanic symbol. And this piece of paper that we sign is what we call a promissory note. I promise to pay. I promise to slave. And we give the bank, that system, this establishment system, the power to monetize our signature into digits in today's form, right? And so they create digits on a computer screen. And we use our credit cards or even paper notes, which are legal tender, which is another tool of a promise to pay. And there is no money occurring. There is nothing happening except the destroyed creation from the destroyed man signing a piece of paper to the bank, the men and women behind it who are pressing buttons.
There's nothing of value there.
There's nothing of value. There's no substance.
Money is just, and money was invented just as a form of covert slavery, rather than the overt slavery where they need the slave master keeping control of his 10 slaves. When they said, okay, you guys can all be free, every stone you move or whatever we give you a gold coin for, suddenly everyone's rushing to move their slave stones. They don't need the man standing there with the whip. They're voluntarily enslaving themselves for these little pieces of thing that they can then exchange for food and whatever, whereas in fact all we have to do is just give all the food to each other anyway, and we wouldn't have to deal with all that. But that's all money is. It's covert slavery rather than overt slavery.
There's no money. It's because all it is man and man's power to create fruits of labour. That's all that's happening. So as I said before, we're either creating creation and expanding the information of creation as co-creators, or we're destroying. We can only be doing one thing or the other. So in terms of copyright, we are not only just renters of the ideas. We've been brainwashed into believing these ideas, so that we serve a fictitious world in a fairy tale full of third parties. Because the royal family is a third party. The judges and the politicians and everything we deal in, they're all third parties. There's no one there taking full responsibility for providing substance, because meaning providing substance means they're providing consciousness. Because we're now in a dead world where everything's dead, so they can't provide you with anything dead. And there's no remedy except more suffering, because because it's dead. That's why you get 300,000 mortgage foreclosures, or police officers breaking out of cars, or sheriffs trying to steal your fruits of labour, because they've never given you anything in the first. The bank didn't give you anything. They gave us nothing. When you signed a piece of paper and they said you borrowing X amount of dollars, there was no borrowing of nothing. It was just the idea.
And in fact, what actually happens is that they also make themselves a nice little credit. So if you borrow 400,000, they put the 400,000 digit in your account. They also create a nice little 400,000 for them as well. So in fact, the role letter saying, "Excuse me, what did you actually loan me? Because we're actually creating the money for them, not them for us."
Again, stress the point. There's no money. Nothing's happening. There's no credit. There's nothing. It's just an idea that's been imagined. It's all imagined. It's like a fairy tale. But nothing's happening. Except our pieces of paper, anyone who's pushing dots on keyboards, and anyone who's moving the paper around from any office to any other bank to any other government department. It's just men putting their energy into these pieces of paper we've signed. Which leads to a couple of factors. One is that in the education system, when we were put on the conveyor belt and brainwashed through the education system, we were educated to creating a person, which, what's his name? Eckhart Tolle calls, we discusses ego. That person is an ego, it has a mind. It's a fiction. It doesn't exist. But I look at it like a Barbie doll, or Ken and Barbie. We've been trying to create for ourselves a Ken and Barbie that we have to maintain for ourselves, that we carry with us as a third party through the rest of our lives. We've got to make Ken dressing well. Ken's got to, he's got to have a career and a course. He's got to be able to meet his obligations in the Western world that he's part of the fairy tale. And so, Ken and Barbie also likes football, and Ken likes to have his drink, and he likes to smoke his dope, and Ken likes the Labor Party, so he votes Labor. But his mate up the road, Joe, he's a Liberal, and on it goes. But the whole thing is a fantasy. But we are the Ken and the Barbie. We don't even know who we are anymore. We're so utterly brainwashed in the fairy tale. So the copyright of the Crown owns that Ken and Barbie that we've created for ourselves, because it's their idea. They introduced it to us. It was their fictitious world. So this priest who started this, he couldn't take an interest with the living man, because that's part of creation. He couldn't do that. He had to get us to create for ourselves a fictitious character, so he could contract with the fiction of that fictitious character that we formed for ourselves. And that fictitious character comes out of our signature when we sign the promissory notes, or when our parents registered our birth certificate, or when we applied to become a citizen of a corporation, like in Australia, and become an Australian citizen. Now, there's a lot more to admiralty law, and John Harris, we can give you the links. John covers that ground very well. The anti-terrorist is another video. He covers that ground very well. Irene Moss-Gravenhurst is another one that covers this ground very well. So we could provide at the end of the video some links to all this, because they could cover the ground. So I think I have the interest of getting more into the spiritual, more the consciousness side of this thing, so we can comprehend how this has happened. What do we have to do to get out of this mess?
Yes, because you want to talk about the remedy, don't you? But there's one thing, I don't know, maybe you've covered it, maybe those videos cover it, but would you like to talk about the idea of middlemen? Because we were talking about that over lunch. Or do you think that's covered in the other thing you'd rather send people
the middlemen is what I said before, is that when we sat on the laps of our parents or friends and they were reading us the fairy tale, we have been introduced, we're forming that fictitious character who then becomes a role player in the fairy tale. So that's why our kids can run around and be Spider-Man, or there is some character they formed out of Harry Potter or Superman or whatever. Now, there's no difference to the grown-up adult who's been used to all that gradualism, who now walks around as the police officer, who's wearing a costume and a title, with the story that backs it, that he has a standing. And then the rest of us who are serfs and commoners who have put the police officer into a higher standing than us. Right? So when you talk about middlemen is just part of the of the construct that the establishment brought into place through the alphabet languages that we were brainwashed into comprehending.
And it's the third parties that are present in just about every area of our society. It's like between me and the tree, we can have if I'm a child, we have our direct understanding, but then if the teacher comes in and starts explaining to me about this tree or whatever, she's being the third party coming in and not letting us have our direct relationship. And that's what just about every area of our society, there's some third party coming in, they're telling us what we have to do because this rule says we have to do, and yet it comes back to that it's not their fault, they're just doing their job. You know, so it's not their responsibility that they're telling you you're going to lose everything you've got or whatever, but they're doing it on behalf of something else. And that's why people do these.
And if you've got a complaint, you've got to go to that department over there, and they'll handle that matter. And then you go to that department over there, they'll put you somewhere else, and you never ever find anyone who takes responsibility. So just with third parties. The other thing that I find very important is that a third party is not required in the real world. We don't need a third party. I mean, all we are really doing is creating acts of love. We're creating substance. I mean, either if you're a farmer and you like to grow food, or whether you're a carpenter, or whatever the skills we may offer, when we're creating that substance and we are releasing it for the benefit of others, and we're in a community, we're all doing that for each other, that's all we need. We don't need a middleman to come in to create a fictitious economy so that we can trade and barter the acts of love that we've created to benefit each other. What's the point of it? So there's a con in the third party where they have, the people behind it, those who've constructed this, all our energy, all our attention is focused through the third parties to them, so they get all the power, which basically, if you think of a pyramid shape, compartmentalised, very few at the top. At the very top was this high priest who started this insanity back in 8000 BC. And this kind of brain control programming has never gone away ever since. In fact, this Western world we're living in today still is ancient Egypt. We've never left it. It may have changed its guise, but it's still the same construct. It's never gone, you know.
So now, would you like to? Yeah, I think now maybe it'd be a good idea to talk about the remedy. Yeah, if that's good with you.
Unless you didn't you want to talk about the we will lead every revolution?
Do you reckon that's better? Is that a better thing way now, or do you think the remedy? Because we've been talking about the remedy a bit so far, so maybe
they work together actually.
Yeah,
they work together.
Yeah.
Well, the we will lead revolution against us, and the remedy. Well, two things. The establishment, we call it the James Bond syndrome, and this we will lead every revolution against us. It's all about the powers that be. This is the Judeo-Judaic. Some call it Zionists. This is not to do with Jews. This is the Aryan bloodlines, that all go back into ancient Egypt through Canaan or Canaanites, back through Britain, Great Britain. Assuming this because they record all their history, and their history is their history. You'll find that the 13 tribes of Israel, or three of them are three of the 13 sects of the ancient Egyptian cults, the black magic cults. And Canaan is one of those, or Canaanites is one of those 13 Israel lost tribes, which really is actually ancient Egypt, and they're one of the 13 tribes or sects or cults of ancient Egypt. And so what they've done, when the priests, again, everything ties back to this priest, this guy called Satan, who started all this madness, and everything's created in his image. And you've got to remember that he trained his son. Yeah, but I want to make sure. He trained his son, who trained his great-grandson. And down through the ages, we now have the founding father, because all those bloodlines all worship the founding father, who is this guy, who's the copyright holder of the crown. And so they all worship their founding father. And the founding father has many names. You know, they call him Moloch, Baal, Ahriman, Zeus, you know, probably even Jesus. And there's many other names they've given this guy, including Satan and Lucifer, and Moloch. So when you're looking at we will lead every revolution against us, he's had to use truths and hide lies within the truths, so that the serfs and commoners have been brainwashed. I mean, we really need to discuss the thing about the spell under the spell.
Yeah.
We've got to really explain how this all ties in. What they've done is that, maybe I should look at it from another window, is that we call it the James Bond syndrome. You want to get James inside the compound to do his job of wrecking the joint, which he's very good at, but you've got to get him past the high security gates. So you put him in the boot of the car, and you do what you can to get him past the high security gates, and then you find a nice quiet place where you can open up the boot and let him out to go and do the job of wrecking the joint. Now, we will lead every revolution against us is where they provide truths And in the truth, they hide the lie, which is James Bond. And so, for instance, in the Bible, they say, well, you know, what Jesus says, you know, do unto others you wish them do unto you. But you're born in original sin. So the example, you know, the same as, you know, they talk about in marketing, you know, like you buy a lolly wrapper and it's beautifully packaged and they give you all the wonderful happy smiles, and or a banking commercial with a wonderful family, and we're going to meet the bank manager and we're going to sign, and they love us and they care about us, they're going to give us some substance, but really we're going to get nothing at all. But with the lolly wrapper, they're going to put some aspartame. So we're going to take what appears to be the intent for goodness towards us, but we're going to introduce something bad into our body. And it's that one thing, that aspartame, does all the damage. With the James Bond syndrome, the one lie hidden amongst many truths is what causes all the damage, because a truth can't cause any damage. It's impossible for a truth to cause damage or do any harm. So they used the James Bond syndrome since 8000 BC. Since all this started, they've had to use morally correct truths in such ways to get our attention. So we put our energy into what they're offering us, and then they hide the lie in amongst it, so that the lie, it's like a payload. It just unleashes and causes all the destruction to us, to our brain or whatever, to our well-being.
It makes it impossible for us to live the truth.
To live the truth, because it's been distorted. So you'll find that in everything of life, that the Freemasons behind it, the establishment, which really brings in the other thing, is that when the British Empire receded after the 1500s, and gradually, you know, because the covert, you know, thing where, you know, there's soldiers and all that, they've already terrorised the new lands of the Americas and Gondwana land and whatever, and they've exterminated most of the indigenous man on the lands in the mega millions. And then they brought in place all the commoners. They brought all the European commoners out, offering them the opportunity for freedom on the new lands of these, you know. And so the British serfs and commoners or renters have always been under the standing of this control that's been going back a long way. Really, what I'm trying to describe is it's like they've had a noose around their neck loosened up with the promise that you're coming to a new land where you can create your true freedom, you can stake your claim in the Americas. And so tens of millions of them over years immigrated out of Europe and Asia and wherever, and they come to this now we call Australia and New Zealand and Canada and America and South America, And but you're noticing very recently that all these freedoms were not really freedoms at all. We're now having an overt situation now starting to appear again, where the noose around the necks of the commoners and the generations, their descendants are experiencing the tightening up, because they see us as renters and serfs of their copyright in their Western world.
So they got us to go in, use all the sweat and blood and tears to make the lands civilised, and then we come back and go, oh well, come on, give us our dues then.
Yeah.
You know, having said it's all yours, go for it. It's like, well, actually, we're still here.
Yeah. And that's the James Bond syndrome working again, where they use it. So the "we will lead every revolution against us" operates even today when you get leaders who it's like if you think of like a garden, you're a gardener and you plan your garden years in advance. You know, I'm going to plant that tree there, I'm going to plant that bush there, we're going to plant that one over here. That's going to take 10 years before it starts to produce its fruits, and this one's going to take 5 years, etc., etc. Well, in the world of brain control, you know, to keep the serfs and commoners dumb and stupid, to keep them giving their power away to the fiction so that those few can have all the power to control everything, the plants are men and women who've been conditioned, have been educated into these roles. And so at certain times along the way, you get someone who comes forward who starts to offer a remedy to some form of chaos that's been introduced to the community that was engineered by the establishment. And so the "we will lead revolution against us" lackeys are always those who offer the remedy to the chaos so they can bring that order. That remedy being they provide the order. In doing that, they keep us bamboozled and distracted, so we don't remember who we are. We still cannot connect with creation because we're too busy in the fiction of the fairy tales. It doesn't matter what the fairy tale may be. It's anything that delinks us and keeps us from not returning to creation and connecting with that information of creation. And that's what they're doing. So, you know, I've mentioned on the website, David Icke's one of them, and he does it, and you'll find that there are many of them. Most of them in the alternative movements who are getting a lot of press now are the "we will lead every revolution against us" lackeys. And it goes into arts, it goes into it goes into many fields.
But it's all about distractions.
It's all about distraction, and it's to protect the agenda, which is the power base of this true Freemasonic world.
And that, in fact, is what most of, just about everything out there is a distraction. Even the freedom truth movement that's working so hard, you know, to stand up for what they believe is their legal rights, blah, blah, blah. Really, it's just a distraction because they're still keeping the system going by putting their energy into it. As are, I don't know, what are the other examples? All the religions and all that. It's still a part of the system that keeps it all going and distracts us. So anyone who wants to raise their head and say, hang on, I think things are not right, they've got somewhere to usher them. You know, usher them over here, and they'll be kept busy going around that circle for several years. And
well, see, that's right, because the ever since all this started, when this priest started coming up with another dream that was self-centered, and he wanted everyone to worship him, he was actually creating enclosures, and the sheeple who were starting to listen and getting seduced into believing in his world would start to become the sheeple that enter into these enclosures. And then, because lies wear thin, he has to reintroduce a new lie, bringing in the James Bond syndrome, so that the sheeple can be, a gate can be opened for them, and they can move forward into the next enclosure. And so we've got 8,000 or 10,000 years of this kind of recorded history where the sheeple have gone from one fairy tale to another fairy tale to another fairy tale to another fairy tale, and now we're living it again. They're offering more fairy tales. It could be cosmic phenomena fairy tales, or galactic federation fairy tales, or
Barack Obama and Kevin Rudd, who are going to change the economies and all that. They're saviors.
They're all but it's anything but us connecting with consciousness, where we take full responsibility as co-creators and we're serving each other.
And anything but saying, actually, we don't need you. See ya.
We don't need you.
We're going to put our energy elsewhere. And then see how long your system stands.
Yeah, we don't need to suck on the nipples of your fictitious private corporations for anything anymore. We don't need the middlemen anymore to intercede in our affairs. That we can take full responsibility for our lives, right? So I think it's a fascinating thing when you look at it that way, and that brings again going back to the alphabet language. You see, part of the brain control was that we had to learn to comprehend the meanings of these ideas that are fictitious, which are not going to be, the creation cannot teach us this. So we had to be brought we were put onto a production line, what I call a factory planet Earth, and there's a conveyor belt, and in the conveyor belt they teach us the meanings of their alphabet language. In this case, English being the New World language, and every letter of the English language is an incantation, and that incantation has a meaning. But they don't teach us the meaning of these letters. They only teach us the meanings after we combine the letters into forming words that have a meaning. Now, I call it demons of meaning because they're fictitious. They don't actually have any substance behind it. Like, judge or Supreme Court. There's no substance behind it. It doesn't offer us anything. So they teach us to learn to spell an alphabet language so that we can be under the spell. And that's what the incantation does. So we learn to comprehend, or we learn to understand an idea that's fictitious. And in comprehending it, we can then put our energy into it. So for instance, if we cannot comprehend the idea of law, like the indigenous motherland would not know what law means. Because in the living world, everything already is conscious. So it's the consciousness of already is the law. It's the consciousness already is the money. It's the consciousness already is the insurance. The consciousness already is the Medicare. The consciousness already is everything we've already got. Because it's acts of love that we create to benefit others. But when you take an idea out and you remove the consciousness out of it, then you have an idea that's an empty shell. It's got nothing in it. And it needs us to keep putting our energy into it. And whoever is the founder of that idea takes all the power. So that's why the established bloodline families gets all the power, because we continue putting all our energy into it to prop it up. So their education system, it's their education system, it's not ours. It's their fictitious world, it's not ours. We're man, we're part of creation. We have nothing to do with a dead world. Right? So the conveyor belt prepares us to form the third-party characters that we believe that we are. That's why we have a driver's license with a picture of us on it, with names written in uppercase or lowercase, and how we have land titles offices and we claim that we own some piece of land, But look, when you think about it, this fictitious world that we've created for ourselves, and we know it doesn't exist, then you realise there is no such thing as a land titles office. There's no such thing as the Federal Reserve Bank. There's no such thing as the Supreme Court. There's no such thing as the government. There's no such thing as a royal family. There's no such thing as any of them. None of them exist. They only appear to exist because we put our energy in them to prop it up, which benefits those behind it who get the benefit from all the energy that we're giving it to them. So when they're talking about the Christians are waiting for their Jesus Messiah, what they're really waiting for is for us to return to reclaim full responsibility and start reclaiming the man that we really are and start creating the conscious man without the fairy tale. Meaning, as what Fiona said, we don't need you anymore. We don't need your third party. We don't need your fiction. We don't need to suck on the nipples of your private corporations. We don't need your fictitious money. We don't need your fictitious insurance. We don't need your fictitious politician. We don't need your fictitious media. We don't need anything that's artificial. We don't need it because we're fully responsible in the living world. So that's the reason why education exists. For that very reason, to help us to completely disconnect us from the living creation so we cannot remember who we really are. If we're always, see, the thing is that there is no separation between man and man and man and earth and man and every one of us. We are all of the same consciousness. We are that consciousness. It's like, when the cream rises to the top with the milk, that cream is our thoughts and our ability to reason, to co-create with all of creation, because we have this amazing gift that comes with mega responsibility to co-create for creation. As the creator. We are the creator, but we can't own it. Like you can't own your last breath without dying. You can't, we can't own creation. Otherwise we fall. So we have the power of creation to be responsible. We can't own it. It's the responsibility to create and release it to benefit others. And this is where the remedy comes into it, which we'll get into very shortly. We'll discuss this soon about the remedy.
Actually, before you go there, just a distinction. You've mentioned creation a lot. I just want the viewers here to sort of, if you can expand on it, God, the God in the Bible, the living God of creation, probably the same thing, I believe, or I feel that God is creation, the consciousness, it is us, we are of equal creative power, but not greater, so I don't know what your view is there.
Yeah, well, I mentioned before, the question is, are all men equal? Now obviously we're all going to say yes, no one's ever going to say no, but the clever ones say, some men are more equal than others. Meaning that the fact that we have the power of creation to co-create, it gives us the full power of the Creator. We are God. But we're not God as a fictitious person. We are consciousness. That consciousness is greater than our body. The consciousness is not me. I have been given the gift to work with that consciousness. And that consciousness provides me with access to everything of creation, because that consciousness is the Creator. It's the body of the Creator. Because we're not separated from it. Without the substance of a mother and a father coming together to co-create the space of love, the dream of a child, and then the spark of creation with the male sperm exploding with the woman's egg, which fills that space of love, that dream that they've created for a child to create the physical form. Now, the dream that they both create has substance because it's a living dream. The physical act of the man's intent and the woman's intent to create the child because they dream their child, that's substance, and substance creating substance. That you cannot have an invisible man and an invisible woman creating a living child. It's impossible. You cannot have an invisible man and a living woman creating a child with substance. You need to have substance with substance to create substance. You need consciousness with consciousness to create consciousness. So how can we be separated from the Creator? It's impossible. We need the substance of all that is to be able to co-create with all that is. So we are not tiny aspects of the universe, as some led us to believe. We are creation. We're not walking to creation. We're not walking from creation. We are creation. Some people say, but you can even hide from creation. I'm saying, well, that is an act of creation. Everything, every breath is an act of our creation, because we are creating the man that we are creating now by the way we breathe and the way we eat. So if our thoughts and feelings are sincere and pure in its intent, that perfection is what we expand. But when we distort it, then we put our energy into what is distorted, then we're expanding the distortion, meaning we're creating destruction. We're destroying everything that we were creating consciously. So God, in my opinion, God means responsibility, to co-create with the substance that the Creator's provided us to create with. And we have access to it everywhere. And we're not separated from it. There's no rules of the divide. There's none of this, time and space and dimensions and levels and planes, but you can't find them. Where are they? Hello, dimensions.
Yeah.
Hello, Macquarie Bank. Please talk to me. This is what one of my friends told me once. Hello, Supreme Court. Please talk to me. So what I'm getting is that the fiction doesn't exist. There's no divide and rule. I mean, the letter A, or the number 1 or 2 or 3, or anything that comes out of geometry. What does any of it do for creation? What can we do with it to create? Right? In the real world, we would feel the consciousness we want to create as a table, and we would create the table. When we create a child, we don't get out a compass and a rule and we sit there and we measure what kind of child it's going to be. It's going to be 5'8", and it's going to have a 3.5 inch long nose, and it's going to have toenails that are going to go 2 inches to the left, and we're going to have the skin underneath it move a little bit to the right, and that's impossible. Our consciousness has all that already in it because we feel it and we create it, and we create the child consciously. And everything is like that. And when we're conscious, meaning we're not doing harm, we're not going to go to a tree and destroy the trees. The tree will tell us which one we can take. The trees tell us what we can take. The trees will tell us, don't touch me. The cows tell us, don't touch my udder. Everything of creation tells us, everything. But because we've been brainwashed in the man-made education, we take that and we place it on whatever we're looking in creation, blocking out what it's trying to tell us. So we can't feel it. Meaning we're unconscious and we're fallen. And that is this thing of the thing of what Bruno's mentioned about creation and God, is that we have the responsibility, the full responsibility, to be accountable for everything we think and feel and do and write.
So maybe now would be a good time to talk about the remedy.
Yeah. Very simple. You look at walk into a beautiful forest, dive into a beautiful barrier reef, or observe a stunning night sky. And in that instant, in every moment of that instant, all we are experiencing is the substance being created by every life form, inanimate or not, in that moment released for the benefit of creation. That is what we're experiencing. Now we have fallen away from that. So the remedy is for us to start creating substance to benefit each other and give up this fictitious person who has a fictitious life in the Western world civilization of commerce, who needs to have money, who needs to have insurance, who needs to have a career and a course, etc., etc., and start putting all our energy into serving each other with the living substance of the living world. Bring our children back into the living world. Let creation educate our children. Let us become re-educated again to the living world. So what I'm saying, and those who've been to the loveforlife.com.au website, realise, and there's thousands who've written to us, I mean, it's many thousands have written to us, asking, what are we doing? And we're saying, well, what are you doing? Why are you waiting for us to do something? Why don't you come out here? Because we have the dream. We've created a dream out here in the Southern Highlands, right here in the heart of the Southern Highlands, and there's a reason for it. We're going to do it here. If you want to do, if this dream lives for you, and you feel inspiration, you feel inspired, well, put the effort in. Don't wait for us to make it happen for you. If that's your dream, well, come and create the dream. We'll come co-creating together. Let's create a magnificent night sky together. Let's create a magnificent forest together. Let's create a magnificent community together. So come out here. Start renting out here if you have to temporarily. Use the fiction. Move out here. Find somewhere to rent. And together we'll co-create together. Then we'll get the land. We'll go and we'll start to expand a kingdom on the land. Now, the Ringing Cedar books covers this magnificently. And we're so grateful these books came into our lives because they really helped to refine the aspirations that we were feeling during the 3 years of our journey after the bank fraud and everything that happened to us. The remedy means this, is that, and which we covered, do no harm. Everyone has the right to food. Everyone has the right to shelter. Everyone has the right to true health, and where you don't have to ever think about, my God, someone's coming tomorrow to take my home away, or all the things that one experiences with the trauma of the Western world. In the Ringing Cedar books, Anastasia points out beautifully that every man and woman has the creator's right, or we agree to it because we are creators, to a hectare of land. We each have a hectare of land. And that hectare of land is our space of love, where we can create the consciousness that we want to create for that way of life. So we can create a tribe. It could be 500 of us, 1,000 of us. I suspect the first one we created in the Western world civilization, to step out of it, maybe quite a few thousand of us. Because we have to break the presumption of the Crown that we don't need you anymore. We've got to do it out in the open and say that we are not of your under your standing anymore. We don't need you anymore. And if we have that many of us, we don't need the money anymore, because we've just got our acts of love. If there's enough of us working together, we have the manpower and the ingenuity of our brains and our commitment and our intent to serve each other. And in serving each other, it's what gets us to pull out of the whole, this madness, this insanity. We get the first one happening, it becomes not like a mould where everyone fashions a mould out of it, attempt like a sameness. It becomes like a source of inspiration for their uniqueness to go and create others. And already people dream of returning to the land where they can be part of tribes and communities and villages. And we feel that that is the only way forward, because we are tribes and communities and villages. Another way to look at this, which I find very important, is that before man fell, when man travelled on the land, everything man saw was creation. Man never saw a passport. Man didn't see a country or a nation or a civilization, because they don't exist. There's no such thing as Jew or Christian or Buddhist or Islam. They're constructs. We are all children that were hijacked from the cradle into the conveyor belt through, and our parents being part of the brainwashing, putting us on the laps and putting us through the fairy tales. We would become conditioned into a fairy tale, and we call ourselves Christian, or we call ourselves Buddhist, or we call ourselves whatever, or we call ourselves, I'm an Australian, But there's no such thing as an Australian. There's no such thing as a Christian. There's no such thing as a cult or a creed or anything. They're all fictions. We are man. And every step man created was an act of creation. Wherever man went, all he saw was creation. If man came across another tribe, the tribe would recognize the man would recognize the tribe. Everything the tribe was created was shared with the man. Everything the man was created was shared with the tribe. The beauty was, because of man's true language, man's tongue, because man formed his true language through the sensations of creation, interacting with not the alphabet languages, but with the true language of man's tongue, which I've discussed before, the man could talk to another man, because that was the language of creation. It wouldn't matter where you went. You could use hand and face gestures, you could use sounds, and you could use arts and crafts, and you could communicate with each other, and there was no discommunication. Because creation is everything that is, and we're part of creation. Where the alphabet languages can't do that, because it's dead. So the remedy is to be conscious of the fiction, to be conscious of learning to wean ourselves away from the fiction. So we've written a thing called the 10 Steps of Kindom. And the kindom's without the G, it's Kindom. And in the 10 Steps of Kindom, it's where many of us come together to form a tribe in the hundreds, where we learn to serve each other. We do not bring Buddha, we don't bring Jesus, we don't bring Allah, we don't bring David Icke, we don't bring Deepak Chopra, we don't bring anything from anywhere that's anywhere. We just bring our acts of love that we create, that's living substance, that's shared with everybody else. And in doing that, and that's unlimited what we can do. We don't have to be boxed into some herd mentality. So in doing that, we can learn how to care for each other, and then gradually we can then go out, find a hectare of land, and create our kindomain on that land. The kindomain being your home. It could take up maybe a quarter of that 1 hectare or 2.5 acres, and then you have 1/3 that could be your gardens, all your living foods and your living food forests, and the other 1/3 to a half is your forests and whatever bush. Now, the great thing about this is the whole community goes in and builds the house. The whole community goes there and helps to set up the infrastructure of the gardens. And the whole community there is for that family. And then that family is then freed up to then put their energy into another family, help another family build their home. Everybody's helping each other. And so everybody gets the benefit of everybody else. Meaning, we end up in a situation, though it's hard at first, we end up with so much free time. Because we're not having to be slaves anymore to propping up dead corpse fictions. We don't have to go to work to make money for taxes. We don't have to worry about insurance and superannuation and all that sort of stuff. All that's gone. And now we have all the spare time to contemplate life, to get aspirations. You know, one of us might want to create a vehicle that's made out of living DNA substance that can float and hover. We'll be able to make spaceships that can be pushed through consciousness, through the atmosphere, instead of having to go to a mountain and destroy the mountain, create a steel with fossilized fuels that are not renewable, and destroy all the creation, and then try and force it through the atmosphere of consciousness and destroy the atmosphere, and then leave the destruction out there and around the space of the earth as well. You know, and continue causing destruction wherever we go, because we can't go anywhere while we do that. It's impossible to travel like that. But through consciousness we can travel, because that consciousness of creation is who we really are. And we can create these worlds through our consciousness, because we dream them. We have the power to dream it, and through thinking we can create it. So the whole idea is creating these tribes, and then inspiring others to create tribes. And before you know it, it spreads, and the whole earth has become a kingdom again, with no more fairy tale, no more fiction, nothing. Just man and consciousness. And then we have, it's just extraordinary. We are now using 100% of our brain, and not the 1%, the 10% that most of us are using. Is that
cool? Yeah.
Is that,
I think I'm about there actually, which will make Bridget happy. Yeah, unless there's anything else you want to go into.
just one couple of fine things. You know, we're talking about living food, raw food eating. We're talking about learning. What we will learn to do is not stop distorting creation. Stop bringing the man-made knowledge, which is distorted, into our everyday life, and corrupt the perfection of what the Creator has perfectly created for us.
Because you said no animal gives its permission to be killed.
That's right. I mean, this is what's been proposed to many of the indigenous elders and those on contact. Many Christians think that they have this inherent right that they can kill a creature and eat it, an animal, or even native elders can do that. But I say to them, something Fiona and I felt. Well, no creature has ever given its permission to be killed. You know, these indigenous tribes think that they do. Well, then why the hunt? Why is the animal scared and frightened and has to run? Why do you have to trap it? Why do you have to use boomerangs and arrows and spears and any other man-made implement to kill the creature? Then you have to remove its consciousness out, so it's a dead corpse, and then you eat a dead corpse that's now rotting inside your body. Now, if the creature is willingly giving its permission to kill and eat it, why wouldn't it not just come before you and surrender itself to you so you can eat it, without any effort whatsoever from us to have to go and hunt and chase it down and kill it and eat it? And that's part of consciousness, because in consciousness, you'll find that in raw food eating, living food eating, we're not meant to be cooking food. We're not meant to be destroying the living substance of all the fruits of labour that have come out of the trees and the plants. And with the purity and sincerity in our intent and everything that we do, it will provide us with that living substance. And you'll find in all the research we've been looking into, and that includes Anastasia, the way she lives deep in the Siberian taiga, they only eat like a handful of food a day. And they're not slaves to the garden. The food forest does everything for them, and they hardly do anything whatsoever. And she spends her whole day serving others. That's all, and she has utter freedom. And you'll find that all the raw food is like one guy I read about. He died in big wave. I think it was big wave surfing accident in his 90s. In his 90s, you know, or maybe I'm exaggerating, big wave, but he died of a surfing incident. There are others who physically died of complications because of an accident, not because of health. Raw fooding means you're removing the distortions out of our body and restoring the purity and sincerity of who we really are in its true form. So that's all part of it, you know, and it means it's spreading to everything that we do.
Awesome.
Purity and intent. That's the remedy.
Yeah.
Get out of the fairy tale. Stop putting our energy into fiction. Look in every idea that's presented, including scrutinise everything Fiona and I have presented here. If you find that there's a fairy tale in what we're offering, bring it to our attention, because we want to learn. You know, we're willing to drop anything that's a fairy tale that come up. You know, you must have substance to back it. So anyone else who presents anything to you, who are out there in the world, whoever it may be, look for the substance and what they're offering. And if they're only offering you a fairy tale and it's got no substance to back it because it's a third party just propping up a fairy tale, you know it's rubbish and it's lies. And that's, so learn to use your brain, think things through for yourself. Now obviously we can probably, when we post this to Google and YouTube shortly, we can provide the opportunity for people to start asking questions, and we can enter into discussions about these remedies. You know, and so we can refine and we can have more discussion. We can start interviewing others who want to share in this discussion. Because there's no future in the Western civilization of commerce. And the other thing, to end this, they will try to come up with a remedy, and they'll come up smelling like roses. They'll bring the earth to the point of utter collapse, and then they'll come forward and offer their remedy to bring order out of the chaos of their making. But that remedy will still have some form of commercial enterprise involved in it. And you'll know straight away it is a lie and it's a deception, because there is no such thing as commerce in creation. The only place you're going to find the truth is when you find the living substance of creation as acts of love that have been offered as an equal exchange in value between us. That is where you'll find the truth. Doesn't matter whether it comes in my voice or someone else's voice, what language they're speaking, or what ideas they may have. If there's an act of love that has been created with substance to benefit another, then you know they're on the right path and they're offering you the truth. And that's how I think you can scrutinize all the deceivers, all these "we will lead every revolution" against us lackeys. You know, we could mention one more thing about HARP. We talk about HARP technology. Look, I suspect what they're doing is that they've got the Reagan laser Star Wars satellites already launched, and they've had them up there for 15 years, and they're introducing more of these laser satellites. They've got the HARP technology, which is these electromagnetic pulses, and which, you know, there's a lot of that on the Love4Life website. You can do Googles for this and learn about HARP. And then there's the chemtrails, or the chemical trails coming out of aeroplanes, and they're chemicalizing the atmosphere, putting heavy metals into the atmosphere. And with the HARP technology, using their frequencies and the laser satellites, they can project holograms and create clusters of spacecrafts and spaceships. And these are fictitious things. And they'll also have their own man-made UFOs. These UFOs we actually physically see, and I've had them hover above me. I've had many instances of them, but they're man-made. They're not coming from somewhere else. Everything is done by man, created by man here on the earth. We've been conned into all this stuff. So what I'm getting is that they will probably even try something like, we've been invaded by aliens from another world, and this is where the David Icke stuff comes into it, and a lot of these Project Camelot and some of the stuff that's the themes that are coming out with it. We've got other civilizations and races and all that. Mate, where are they? Where are they? If they're part of creation, they're part of consciousness, where's the consciousness, where's the substance to back it? Isn't it interesting that every time we hear something about something like this, it's always through a third party. It's always done like a fairy tale. And because we're so used to the fairy tale, we think, oh, it's true. But hey, whoa, you're hearing it from a third party. Yes, I'm the medium of someone from Andromeda. You know, beam me down, Scotty, you know, and we're going to come down and da-da-da-da. But you find, look very carefully, you'll find it's brain control. You'll find it's probably the personality of the character of the man or woman who's channeling this. It's a phantom. It's a spirit that is not of any substance, and brings up another subject. And what I mentioned here, I think most of us who have been involved in this work recognise that what a fairy tale is. And I should have mentioned this much earlier, but I think it's a very significant thing. When we are creating with consciousness, the man that we are creating, we are filling the body of the man we are with living substance. However, when we project our brain, when we focus our brain into the fiction, into fairy tale. Now imagine the human brain is like a film projector, and the film we put across the film projector is what we begin to focus on. So when they introduced the education system, they brought us in all the fairy tales for us to take our attention, to focus our energy on it. We start projecting it. And what we're projecting out there is what we're creating, because we're the ones creating what we're projecting. You know, because we're the one creating the man we're creating. So if they give us a fairy tale to project, we're creating a fairy tale. here's the problem. The time we spend on a fiction is the time we are destroying the man, the conscious man we are creating. We're now creating a fiction. But we're not creating any substance anymore. Many of us, through the ages, have died without the man being created, the conscious man. We've created ourselves as a ghost or an apparition or a fiction. And it's all over. It's kaput. You've lost your opportunity to create the uniqueness, to be part of the uniqueness of creation. So that is how the priest who started this created the dark side, because there's all this energy that we put into fiction that is without substance. It's got no consciousness in it. It's an idea that has no substance behind it, no consciousness to back it. And many of us live our whole lives in the Western world fairy tale, and we die in the fairy tale as a dead human. We've not created a conscious living man, and it's all over. And that's why if you go to the man-made cemeteries, the Western world cemeteries, there's not much information available to expand our consciousness, which is very different from the indigenous sacred sites, where the bodies of their descendants, so the bodies of their ancestors and their parents, were taken there, living, and there, of their own choice, they knew when the time was to pass. Now it's possible when we're truly attuned, you actually probably can even dissolve your body and move your body as well. But I think we've forgotten all this. I don't know how we haven't used that full brain. But what I'm getting at is that by placing all the information of the creation of the mother and the father and the grandfather and the ancestors going back, their bodies are placed in that sacred site. Means all the descendants can go there to commune with all that information of creation created by all their ancestors to expand their consciousness, because that consciousness is still alive. It's still part of creation. But when today in the Western world cemeteries, nearly everyone's dying as a dead corpse because they haven't created any consciousness. They're just completely dead. They're just lost in a fairy tale. So when you walk in the cemeteries, you see ghosts and apparitions, because that's what they are. So the remedy, it goes back to the remedy. Create the conscious living man that we are. Don't blow the opportunity that we all have to continue on being part of creation and expanding consciousness. As I said before, to end this, I know, sorry, I'm going on. The information of creation, of all of man that ever was, and all of man that ever will be, is all that information of creation that we are now, that we have access to. And so when we create that information, we co-create and we expand it, we pass it to our children. And the man is who we are. It's not you over here and I'm over here. We are man. We are the leaves of the tree of man. We are the full expression of man. We're not an individual. We're not separated from each other. So when we awaken to the remedy that we are consciousness and we are co-creating together with that substance, I'm your brother. Anything happens to you hurts me. Someone harms you, I've been harmed. If your freedom's taken away, my freedom's taken away. But in the dead fiction, we're so separated as individuals. We're too busy surviving in the Christian story or the Islamic story that we must be saved, to be rescued, to go to the other side. All these fairy tale fictions, that we forget our real brothers and sisters. And it goes on and on. This kind of stuff just goes on and on. You can see it everywhere, you know.